Task in my life to watch the Baltimore Ravens walk off the field out at Mount Davis in the East Bay of Oakland victorious. Now, not as impactful as the day this man walked off the field, these 17 years ago now, back in 2001. We have our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation here. We welcome head coach Brian Billick back onto our airwaves on a happy occasion. Coach, it's been death and dirge and darkness here ever since 44-0 in London. This was a whole new season opener for John Harbaugh and for the Ravens and Joe Flacco. That's a hell of a football game they put together out in East Bay, huh?
It was, and the fact that they went west, we've talked a long time about the difficulties of teams going west to east, east to west, particularly after the travel they've been through in London and then the tough loss against the Steelers. To come back against a good Oakland team, even if it was David Carless, and what did they do? They did it with the formula that you kind of knew, okay, this is what a Raven win will look like, running for better than 140 yards, Flacco, only having to throw 26 passes, and the fact that they get turnovers, and relatively speaking, kept the Raiders' rushing game with Marshawn Lynch in check. So this is when the Ravens win, this box score is one that you kind of is going to get familiar.
Well, and you mentioned the whole part of this thing was take the ball away, get one early, sustain one drive, pop the ball loose, and everything changes on the road. I mean, it turned very, very quickly, and it always seems to turn on these defensive plays, right? Like that kind of a turnover, that kind of a strip, that kind of a run into the end zone, and you're spiking the ball up 14-0 on the road in a 4 o'clock game. That's a nice feeling. I mean, that's a game you're supposed to win, and you're supposed to win going away, and the only way you can really do that then is to play defense and run the ball, and they did enough of that to win on Sunday.
Well, because what it does is a team, and I've always said the thing that intrigues me most about this game is the emotional ebb and flow that teams go through, and a team that now has a team like the Ravens come in, and you get that turnover, and you get that score, and now they're running the ball well. I hate to refer to it as that way, but a sense of panic sometimes sets in, even if you're not real cognizant of it, in that you start forcing the ball a little bit. You start making calls. Now, it's not like they turned the ball over a whole bunch. They really did just get the one turnover. But all of a sudden, you feel like you have to keep up or you have to make things happen. And then that usually, although it didn't in this game, that usually leads to more turnovers. And it's just self-fulfilling. And all of a sudden now, the dam breaks and it's a heck of a blowout. So yeah, we've said it for a long time. Injuries are going to continue to be a factor, but this was a good win, if for no other reason the fact that it's on the road and you had to go that cross country. This is a good solid win.
Offensive line, the much maligned offensive line. Can they protect Flacco? Can they run block? Can we find an emerging back? Can they give Flacco the kind of time to get the ball to Macklin and Wallace? Why there were no explosives, to steal your word, and I do appreciate you retweeting us on Sunday when I honored your word explosive after the Flacco to Wallace beginning of the game. But I know how much that turned you on as an offensive coordinator and a head coach to see you take the top off the defense right away, go for the jugular. That's something we haven't seen Joe Flacco do. And quite frankly, I think a lot of us thought, well, can they protect him? And can he throw the ball 50 yards right now with his back? Because he had looked a little stiff the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, we've talked forever about how important explosive plays are. I mean, you look at what appears to be the best team in the league right now, which is Kansas City, that has for a long time, what have they done? They've played good defense. They've run the ball. They've been efficient. What they've missed is those explosive big plays. Well, they have them now, and they're doing that, and that's why right now they're the lone undefeated team in the league because they've put that entire combination together, and they're sitting there at 5-0. Now we'll see if that translates. For them, for Kansas City, it's all about what are you going to do in January? Can you make a Super Bowl run? They're at that level where you kind of carry that burden along. But right now, they appear to be the best team in the NFL because of that combination.
Well, you know, it's funny. You've been out of the league almost a decade now, and so many of your lieutenants, you know, to see Jack Del Rio running around on the sidelines out there where John Gruden once stood across from you, these many years ago, you know, Jack's got some problems now, doesn't he? I mean, there was a lot of expectation. Now they got an injured quarterback. The defense has not really gotten better. That offensive line that they spent all that money on, they have not been road graders. And as much as we have a Brashad Perryman problem around here, they have a similar problem with Amari Cooper, right? Who was supposed to be special, caught one ball on Sunday, not good enough. The passing game hasn't been good enough. Now they're playing with a backup quarterback. They've got a running back that looks like he's running in quicksand, looks a little over the hill, quite frankly. You know, Jack's got his hands full here, right?
He does, because, you know, anytime you go on a 3-game losing streak, all but against good teams, the Redskins, the Broncos, and the Ravens, you're also in a division with Kansas City and Denver that look pretty good. I mean, a lot of people, including myself, have speculated, well, we could see 3 teams coming out of the AFC West. And right now they're, you know, sitting at 2 and 3. Now, 3 and 2, 2 and 3, again, it's, well, when did you win the 3 and when did you lose the 2? When did you win the 2? When did you lose the 3? That's all, you know, right now the Ravens sitting at 3 and 2 feel pretty good about themselves compared to a week ago. So we're still at that point, but they've got, you know, the Chargers and the Chiefs coming up, and the Bills, who look at the Bills, look to be a pretty good team. So, yeah, obviously it begins with you've got to get your quarterback back. Their defense isn't quite as good. They are running the ball better. But, yeah, you're right. The expectations, the way they played last year, you know, that's what life in the NFL is about. You raise those expectations. That's what these fans, you know, all of a sudden now creates that level of pressure.
Coach, how do offensive lines get better during the course of a season when you've patched the thing together? I mean, I've always heard from these guys that it really is repetition. It's getting out there. It's working together. It's not stepping on each other's feet. It's knowing your assignment within your lane and your little spot of space and holding your block for 2 to 4 seconds to get a playoff. It looked like a different team out there, really, with this offensive line. And especially after, you know, another injury to Matt Skura, Illuminor's out there. We saw him get pushed around by Malik Jackson, amongst others, 2 weeks ago in London. The improvement of the offensive line was pretty marked, I thought, on Sunday.
Yeah, and it can get better. I mean, it's limited in terms of, at the end of the day, and all those things you outlined are very true. And as a coach, that's what you press on. You know, we're just going to get better play at a time, game at a time, technique at a time. But at the end of the day, you got to have the players. And for Jan to go down, more recently, Skura the other day, I mean, we talked about if this offensive line, and doing the preseason games, I felt like if the starting line of Stanley and Hurst and Jensen and Yonda and Howard could stay together for a while, grow together, that this offensive line was going to be okay. Okay enough to protect Flacco, run the ball okay, play great defense, and play to that formula. But all of a sudden now, you know, those pieces bouncing out, and that's tough. So that you're only going to get so much better in that regard, because there's no, you know, magical group of players all of a sudden you can bring in and they're going to make you better. You just got to get better as best you can with those techniques and do some things to find out, okay, where do you have to put your help? Certain route combinations that may take holding on to the ball a bit. Maybe you want to limit those. Maybe you're better with certain types of runs, right or left, inside or outside, depending upon who you have in the game. You try to maximize those types of things, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do.
You know, we put these power rankings out, and we say, all right, the Chiefs, they're number 1 on the power rankings, and look, Carolina won again here this week. But, boy, everybody's 2 and 3 and 3 and 2, right? And of any of these teams, they've all stunk at one point. I mean, the Jets have 3 wins. We think in the end they probably stink. Cincinnati won another game. We were wondering whether that was going to happen. I mean, even the Chargers stole a victory. And even teams like the Ravens that have lost 44-0, Jacksonville, who stunk in week 2 and then stunk again in week 4. I mean, they're like in every other weak team, Jekyll and Hyde. But how about the Steelers rolling over for the Jaguars? And a lot of the home teams from the Rams and Dallas all losing, and Oakland as well, at home this weekend.
Well, we've been saying that you know, the league has become very, you know, homogeneous in the sense that it's getting clumped together. You have a couple outliers, obviously, when you look at what like we talked about with Kansas City and obviously Green Bay, Philadelphia look pretty good right now with what they're doing. You know, on the other end, you got the Giants, you got the 49ers, you got Cleveland, and that's typical. You got a whole bunch pushed towards the middle, and like we said, 2-3, 3-2. You're still in that. This will start to sort itself out here a little bit. A couple of these 3-2 teams are going to go to 4-2. A couple of these 2-3 teams are going to go to 2-4. So that's going to create some separation as we continue on, and people will continue to clump together. We're a long way from this thing solidifying itself. And Raven fans, you know, you may this doesn't sound overly ambitious, but 8-8, 9-7 may win the division, and that's okay. You know, get into the playoffs, and with the pedigree the Ravens, I'm sure the Steelers are saying the same thing. But we're going to see some divisions that 8-8, 9-7 may get it done. So, and then you're in that wild card hunt as well. So, and then you see some divisions, like you say, Carolina looks pretty darn good. Atlanta looks pretty darn good. Tampa has been playing pretty well. And so, yeah, you're just going to see some teams now, these 4-1 teams, and the way that they're doing it. How about Aaron Rodgers again? In that Green Bay.
Yeah,
game.
I was going to say, that's a huge road win for them, and all the problems they had last year. This smells like a different kind of Packer team here right now.
Well, and it is, but it isn't. Familiar. Okay, well, what about the offensive line? The defense looks good at times. Other times, not as much. Can they protect Rodgers? Can they run the ball decently? You know, there are still those kind of questions, but you got. I mean, we talk about Brady and rightfully the way it are, but here you go again, and you get 9 plays, 75 yards with a minute to go to take the lead, and it comes from behind win. I mean, when you have that at quarterback, that comfort zone of we're okay, and whether he does or not, the fact that there's no sense of panic when you have someone like that in that situation, because it's hey, you know what? We've been here before. We can do this, and that's the confidence that they have right now.
Coach, I am taking my wife up to Philadelphia for some cheesesteaks and some Bruno Mars this week. I missed the D.C. shows 2 weeks ago. My wife's a big Bruno Mars fan. Nothing worse than going up to Philly on a beautiful Tuesday night, and they're all wearing their Eagles hats at 4-1. They got a quarterback there, right? I mean, you were that guy always waiting for a quarterback as a coach. Boy, Carson Wentz and all of the controversy and all the stuff they went through and having too many quarterbacks and too much money allocated to quarterbacks a year and a half ago, boy, they wind up smelling pretty good out of this right now as we head into October. They look like they're going to be playing football in January.
Yeah, and beyond the growth of Carson Wentz, which is obviously important. I mean, he had a 4-touchdown game the other day, and he appears to, I think a lot of these young quarterbacks, I'm excited about the young quarterback play, whether it's Jared Goff or Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota when he's healthy, Derek Carr when he's healthy. You know, marching towards this inevitable when we see the Bradys and Breezes and Palmers and Roethlisbergers leave. Carson Wentz, but the biggest addition to me to go with it is the physicality in the running game with LeGarrette Blount. And their defense is better, make no mistake about it. They're beginning to get a play from Nelson Aguilar, their first-round pick. He's beginning to show up a little bit more. So, yeah, I mean, Philadelphia and that NFC East, Philadelphia and Washington look truly like the real deal. Dallas is reeling a little bit, and the New York Giants losing at home to an 0-4 San Diego team.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, this is coach fire kind of stuff, right? And they are the most conservative, see-it-through kind of organization, but it really feels like that Eli Manning and this administration, that they're not going to get up right now. It feels like they're a long way away from 10 wins these days.
Yeah, and they lose Odell Beckham Jr., and and it's typical of the Giants, which are, just as you said, a very straightforward, conservative organization. They tend not to overreact. They've made it very clear the McAdoo's not under any pressure. Now, that doesn't mean they can't change their mind. 0-16 will all of a sudden change your mind. But in the sensing that they were in this, you give them credit as saying, look, we're not going to panic. I know our fans are going to be upset, but we want to hold together, the players' accountability. Because, where you're going to start hearing the typical lose in the locker room. Anytime a team is losing, that's the stereotypical criticism you hear come out of a team that's struggling like the Giants. So they've tried to shortstop it as best they can, but they're in a difficult position right now because obviously, particularly, I mean, and like we know in New York, nothing's, I mean, they got to go play the Broncos and then the Seahawks, all but at home, then the Rams. Those are three pretty good football teams. And as this thing begins to snowball down, I mean, when you go down out until they get to where are they going to get a win? At the 49ers, going west to play at the 49ers? You look at this, where are they going to get that win? Maybe the Cardinals, all but in Arizona. So again, it goes back to my lament last year when I talked about I would never predict a team to go 0-16 last year, even though people thought I did with Cleveland. I never said they'd go 0-16. I just couldn't see where they were going to get a win, and they proved me dramatically wrong that by going 1-15. You look at the schedule. I'm not going to predict that the Giants aren't going to win a game. I'm just looking at the schedule and not sure I see a game where they're going to be favored.
He is our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. As always, Maritime Magic was an incredible evening on Friday night. He is Coach Billick out on Twitter, and our head coach, Brian Billick, joining us here at WNST. Last thing for you, the last is for the best, and the Patriots were considered the best team for 7.5 months till they kicked the ball off 5 weeks ago. They came, if your brother-in-law would have had a kicker of some sort down there in Tampa Bay, the Patriots would be 2-3 right now. They've given up 150 points through 5 games. They don't look like they're going to be that 12-win team this year. It looks like for the first time there's going to be some sort of a mediocrity catfight going on in the AFC East. I mean, even the Dolphins are managing to win some games.
Yeah, but I think, again, they're going to be good enough that they're going to be able to, in my opinion, hold off Buffalo, even New York at 3-2. You have to respect the 3-2. You are what your record says it is. It's a 3-2 that you kind of scratch your head and wonder how long is that going to last. Miami still looks like they're a bit dysfunctional. I think they're gonna. It's a little like the Ravens. Okay, if it's 9-7 gets you into the playoffs, who cares? And are they a dominant team? Are they a team that you're going to look at and say, boy, if we got to go through Foxborough, we're dead? Not so much, and that doesn't mean they can't get better. But that just means where we thought this was a Patriot versus the field, it's not anymore. And like the NFC, this is a wide open battle, which kind of is exciting because it's going to change and morph at the halfway mark, the 3/4 mark, to where we get to the actual end. But this is going to be a dogfight to the end, and that's exciting.
Bears at home, Vikings on the road, one of your favorite places up there in Minneapolis, then short rest and home against the Dolphins. As a coach, you always chunk these things into quarters. I remember you would always say 4 at a time. Let's try to figure this out. These next 3 start to smell very like, we're going to have a season around here in November if we can play football the way we did on Sunday.
Yeah, it's like a game. You get through the first quarter of the game, and okay, now we got a sense of what this team's trying to do to us. We kind of see their blitz packages. We kind of see their formational personnel rotation, see where they kind of want to run the ball. And so now you get into the real meat of the play calling in that second quarter of a game. Well, I think you can say the same thing about a season. We kind of have an idea, notwithstanding some injuries, but kind of what teams are about and what they do and don't do. So now in the second quarter, there's going to be a little sorting out. And we're going to see some strengths and weaknesses from teams as we move forward. We're going to see if the Patriots can hold on. We're going to see if the Buccaneers can find a kicker that's going to change their profile. Does a Mitchell Trubisky playing with the Bears tonight? What does he look like going forward? Can the Bills continue to kind of sustain? Team better watch out for. Bengals seem to kind of getting back into a little bit of a rhythm. If you want to talk about the division, are the Panthers for real at 4-1? And the way Cam Newton, can he sustain that? So a lot of interesting storylines as we get into this second quarter of the season.
Coach, put your chin strap on. We're past the quarter pole here. We got a real season. The Ravens beating the Oakland Raiders. You can follow Coach Billick out on Twitter at Coach Billick as well, as always, for the Living Classrooms Foundation and our partners here on behalf of Baltimore City. Coach, have a great week, man. We'll see you next week.
Sounds great.
You got it, Coach Billick on Twitter, and we are together in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox digitally each and every morning. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where you're always going to get in the best shape of your life around the corner for $10. Judgment-free. They got the lunk alarm. It's always a lot of fun to get in shape at Planet Fitness. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on our WNST tech service. It's spam-free. You always get it first, and it's always brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colazzos very happy about a beautiful effort by the Ravens out in the land of Oaksterdam on Sunday with a huge victory. Now the Chicago Bears coming in this weekend for my birthday. I'm going into the Dundalk High Hall of Fame next week. We're going to have some big doings next Friday in the Dundalk area for those of you who have a little old owl pride, or I'll even invite the Curly haters and the Patapsco and Sparrows Point haters. It's fine. Come on down, man. Let's have a little party next Friday. I'm only going to get into one Hall of Fame in my life, so I am going to celebrate this, especially on the back end of our birthday. Big thanks for everybody out there showing us some love for our new kitty Nala, who we got from the Be More Humane folks out on Nicodemus Road during a time of brokenhearted fall here. So we're fixing ourselves. We're fixing sports radio. We're fixing the Ravens. We're fixing to watch some more baseball this week. The Caps are off to a nice start. It's big doings around here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.